In 2000, the market for unmanned aerial vehicles was valued at $2.4 billion. It's projected that by 2012 that number will have ballooned to more than $10 billion. The staggering demand for UAVs is fueling an explosion of providers, all scrambling to cash in on the multi-billion-dollar market. But regulatory oversight is failing to keep pace with the evolving nature of new technologies and new threats to national security. A model aircraft carrying an IED and a biological agent like anthrax could kill thousands if detonated over a populated area. Non-existent legislation and readily available components allow anyone to develop, test, and ultimately weaponize their own aerial vehicles, putting national security on a collision course. Is located in Maricopa County on a 4,000-acre site near Wintersburg, Arizona. Its 3 reactors generate more than 3,500 megawatts of electricity. If the facility had been attacked by terrorists on 9/11, the devastation would have been catastrophic. A meltdown in one of the plant's reactors could have caused a steam explosion, spewing the core's radioactive material into the atmosphere. And hit with high levels of radioactive fallout. Wintersburg would have been evacuated, leaving it a ghost town, its streets empty, its fate sealed like the concrete and lead sarcophagus encasing the remnants of Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The government would be forced to respond. Radiation would have to be contained. Harmful exposure near the smoldering facility would put cleanup crews in peril as they worked to stop the leak. Officials might turn to a UAV to enter the doomed plant and document the situation. Unmanned aerial vehicles are being increasingly designed, constructed, and employed in roles deemed too dull, dirty, or dangerous for humans. One proving ground for the latest in UAV innovation is the annual International Aerial Robotics Competition. This year's competition challenged academic institutions to develop autonomous unmanned aerial systems capable of navigating through a cluttered indoor environment. Held in the gym of the University of Puerto Rico in July 2009, it focused on vehicles capable of maneuvering in hallways and rooms. What was the intended use for this kind of a UAS?
In this case, it's to search the interior of a room for a target. The idea is that the room would be just a cluttered indoor environment. In this specific case, it was a simulated nuclear, a control room for a nuclear power plant.
Oh, okay. So in case that there was some meltdown, presumably you could send in a UAS and it could document. Okay, that makes sense.
There might be too much radioactivity.
Okay.
The difficult part is automating it. If you want it to operate autonomously and have enough intelligence to navigate through a room like this one and find a target, that is extremely difficult. In the competition, in fact, they specify a certain impedance that you have to design for as far as getting a signal from the UAV back to a ground station. In this case, we need video back to a ground station.
But the only team to successfully identify, photograph, and send images back was Massachusetts Institute of Technology. MIT won the competition by entering a 4-propeller, quad-rotor design UAV, capable of mapping its surroundings and sensing relative motion.
There's been a lot of changes as far as technology, and there also tends to be a lot of inertia. I know, the military, a lot of areas in the military have kind of resisted going to UAVs, Air Force in particular, but that's, I think, started to change recently. And in academia, they've had kind of the same problem, where traditionally vehicles that were unmanned and small were not taken seriously, basically.
Small, unmanned aerial vehicles not taken seriously? In 1981, the Federal Aviation Administration issued Advisory Circular 9157. It encourages voluntary compliance with safety standards for model aircraft operators. However, companies developing commercial UAVs are using the advisory to sidestep red tape that restricts UAV test flights. According to the FAA, the advisory is often mistakenly interpreted as permission to operate small UAVs in the national airspace. Maybe you could tell me the difference, in your opinion, between a UAV and a model aircraft.
Well, the truth is you can't go by size, because you can get UAVs smaller than these. The big difference is the equipment you carry in the airplane.
Now, I've heard UAV, I've heard UAS. I think UAS is the latest, most commonly accepted term, or is it not?
As far as I know, that's the term that the FAA came up with, and that's how they're defining that category of vehicles. And in that case, I guess the general idea is to include not only the vehicle, but also everything else that you need to operate the vehicle, like ground stations. The FAA is kind of drifting toward treating them as all one thing, which is kind of one of the problems.
Have you ever put on a wireless video camera on any? Yeah, just for fun?
Yes, I have a 1 ounce video camera, and I fly that out. I live in a cul-de-sac, and I'll take off and fly around the cul-de-sac, and I can take great video of the cul-de-sac. They are starting to sell systems that you use a set of goggles, and you fly through the goggles.
Yeah.
The governing body of model aviation right now, they're still looking at that. They're not really that excited about that. They don't mind you using them, but they want somebody to stand there, another pilot with you, in case you have a problem with that system.
Now, do they regulate that?
At this point, they have not, but Homeland Security and the FAA and our governing body, the Academy of Model Aviation, have gotten together, and they've had several meetings, and there are some new guidelines that are going to come out.
In April 2008, the FAA formed the Small UAS Aviation Rulemaking Committee. Its purpose was to reanalyze the industry, provide guidance for future regulation, and update AC 9157. In May 2009, the committee released its proposed recommendations. According to the AMA, the suggested regulations are expected to be released as proposed rulemaking sometime in 2010. Regulation may be years away. The committee's recommendations have yet to be applied, but it is the AMA's position that the general limitations to model aircraft under the proposed regulation would be unnecessarily restrictive. The AMA objects to model aircraft weight limits, a flight ceiling of 400 feet, and prohibited use of jet engines.
What you don't realize is the planes you're seeing fly out here, just the little sport planes, most of those are doing 70, 75 miles an hour.
Really?
Yes, you can get up there pretty quick. We're not supposed to exceed 400 feet. The guys do exceed that occasionally. But the other thing we have going on is that Houghton Road out there is the edge of the military airspace for Davisville. We're also aware of that.
What about jet engines? Are they more difficult to fly?
You've got to be ahead of the airplane. They fly really fast. They can go 200 miles an hour. So
they can go 200 miles an hour? Really? Do you think that that's dangerous to sell miniature jet engines to people without any kind of regulation?
That's a good question.
There's at least 3 guys in our club, maybe 4, that have turbine jets.
Uh-huh.
The reason you don't see a lot of them is they're pretty complicated, but they're very expensive.
I know there are some regulations as far as flying model airplanes with jet engines. I think you have to get special permission from AMA, Academy of Model Aeronautics, if you're an AMA member.
Everybody out here is.
Do you have to be to fly?
To fly at this club, yes.
Do you have to be an AMA member to fly in general? No.
The regulations are very restrictive. It's hard to get permission to fly UAVs.
Does the FAA regulate any model aircraft flight?
Not that I know of. They, like you said, they have recommendations. I mean, there's certain things you can and cannot do. You can't launch a rocket off your airplane. That's one of the things you can't do. We have some mid-airs here every once in a while. It doesn't happen that much.
You've had some mid-airs here? Really? Between full-size aircraft?
No.
Okay.
Oh, you're talking full-size?
Yeah. Do you think UAVs are dangerous?
They can be. Yeah.
What makes them dangerous?
Well, possibility of colliding with manned airplanes.
Manned airplanes. Okay.
Flying into somebody. That's the biggest danger. Most guys that fly, if you've got much experience, if you start having a problem with an airplane, you'll put it in rather than taking the risk of actually flying into somebody.
But what if your intention is to fly into somebody?
Are the technical challenges as well as the financial challenges of constructing a UAV within the ability of a single person? Could one person make a UAV, a UAS?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Could some lone wolf try the unimaginable? What would it take? Lacks regulation for one. And hardware. Well, when it comes to hardware, sky's the limit. Online merchants offer everything needed to make a guided missile. A stealthy aircraft would be a suitable platform. A jet engine would be needed to achieve speeds capable of intercepting a commercial airliner. And lastly, it would need a long-range wireless video camera and receiver to allow the operator to guide the vehicle to its target. The cost of this system would be quite low in comparison to other professional UAS, but no less devastating. This system would be fairly basic. The aircraft's ability to avoid radar detection would be imperative. With its relatively small size, a model stealth aircraft would be nearly invisible. A P-60 JetCat turbine engine would propel the craft to more than 200 miles per hour in just seconds. Its electronics package would include a battery, receiver, and servos to move the aircraft's surfaces. The long-range wireless video camera would be situated near the nose of the aircraft and have its own battery and built-in transmitter. It would send a live feed back to a receiver that would link with a monitor and allow the operator to control the aircraft from a safe distance. For all intents and purposes, it could be considered something like a guided missile, isn't that correct?
Yeah, I hate to say that because that's what Homeland Security
Absolutely,
is worried about.
and I understand why.
I think maybe it's more difficult to shoot down a 747 than most people think, but it's, in general, I think there should be some concern here.
Homeland Security after 911 was a lot more interested. Obviously, the potential is there.
In July 2008, President Bush made a fundraising pit stop in Tucson. When he left, his departure from Davis-Monthan Air Force Base was televised live by local news crews. Live images of Air Force One taxiing down a runway preparing to take off. The broadcast let anyone plotting an attack know when and where it would be in the next several minutes. Those minutes could have been used by some lone wolf to ready and launch a small guided missile.